Welcome to our training about the health concerns associated with welding, cutting, brazing, and other hot work in the construction industry. When people think about the dangers of welding, cutting, brazing, and other hot work, they usually think about fires, burns, or explosions. But did you know that hot work also has health hazards associated with welding fumes and light exposure? To weld, cut, and braze safely, you must recognize the hazards in welding fumes that may be present during hot work. Recall ways to control hazards, including ventilation, personal protective equipment, and body protection. And know what radiation and light hazards are for hot work. These are some of the chemicals that may be present in welding fumes. At a minimum, you need to know where you may find them and what their effects are so that you can eliminate or reduce your exposure to permissible limits. Select each welding fume chemical to review where it is found and what its effects are. Iron is the principal alloying element in steel manufacturing. During the welding process, iron oxide fumes arise from both the base metal and the electrode. What do you think exposure to these fumes does to a person? Do you know some of the effects of mercury and lead exposure? Drag each symptom to the appropriate chemical. You should strip paint and other coatings, whether lead-based or not, away from the weld site. They can produce toxic fumes and can ignite and burn. Plus, you'll get a higher quality weld without unwanted contaminants in the molten weld pool. When you weld, you may find fluoride compounds in the coatings of several types of fluxes. Exposure to these fluxes may irritate the eyes, nose, and throat. Repeated exposure to high concentrations of fluorides in the air over a long period may cause pulmonary edema and bone damage. Exposure to fluoride dusts and fumes may also produce skin rashes. You may use chlorinated hydrocarbon solvents to remove oils from metal prior to painting, in degreasing, or other cleaning operations. Heat and ultraviolet radiation decompose the vapors and form highly toxic and irritating phosgene gas that causes the lungs to produce hydrogen chloride, which destroys lung tissue. Carbon monoxide is an odorless, tasteless gas that forms during fuel combustion. Where else do you think you might find it during welding operations? High-intensity ultraviolet light reacts with the air around the welding arc to produce ozone and nitrogen oxides. Nitrogen may also produce hazardous concentrations of nitrogen oxides if you use it as a gas shield. Ozone is present in greater quantities during gas metal arc welding, gas tungsten arc welding, and plasma arc cutting. Ozone and nitrogen oxides can cause great irritation to the mucous membranes, headaches, chest pains, and dryness of the upper respiratory tract. Excessive exposure can cause fluid in the lungs, also called pulmonary edema. Hexavalent chromium is a metallic form of chromium that may be present in stainless steel and chrome-finished parts. Adverse effects associated with hexavalent chromium include asthma and damage to the nasal passages and skin. Hexavalent chromium increases the risk of lung cancer. You plan to torch cut some steel utility pipes that have been painted. Which of the following chemical exposures should you be prepared for in this scenario? Select the best answers. Select each level of the hierarchy of control pyramid to see how you can use it to control your exposure to chemicals during hot work. When performing hot work, wear the appropriate personal protective equipment to protect your skin and eyes from splatters, sparks, and radiation. This may include a welding helmet or welding goggles. Make sure the welding helmet and goggles have the appropriate filter lens for the job. You may also need to wear a respirator and ear plugs or ear muffs for certain operations. To protect your hands and feet, wear insulated welding gloves and leather shoes. Select the link to view a document that explains the appropriate shade levels for specific hot work exposures. Protect your body from ultraviolet and infrared radiation with protective clothing that does not burn easily. For example, clothing made of wool, denim, canvas, or heavy cotton. Do not wear clothing made of synthetic fibers, such as polyester, because they may melt and severely burn your skin. Wear clothing that is properly fitted, not frayed or worn, and free of grease and solvents. Wear a long-sleeve shirt, welding jacket, or coveralls with the cuffs and collar buttoned to cover exposed skin. True or false? The lenses in all welding helmets and goggles provide the same level of protection. Electric arc in welding generates ultraviolet radiation, or UV, which can cause severe skin burns, similar to severe sunburns. UV can also cause damage to the lenses in your eyes. You may hear people refer to this damage as arc eye. Prolonged exposure to UV can increase your risk of skin cancer. For protection from these dangers, wear appropriate protective equipment, including a welding helmet and protective clothing. Electric arc and flame-based cutting equipment generate infrared radiation, or IR. IR heats the skin surface and underlying tissues and can cause thermal burns from overexposure. Welders can stay safe from IR if they wear welding helmets or goggles and protective clothing. Exposing the eye to intense visible light generated during arc welding is very dangerous. Intense visible light can damage the retina. The reflection of welding arcs off shiny surfaces around and behind welders can affect others nearby and can even enter from behind the welding helmet. Welders need appropriately shaded eye and face protection. They also need to protect other people in the area by installing adequate safeguards, such as welding curtains and signs warning nearby employees that welding operations are being conducted. What does it mean if you are near welding operations and the heat or light hurt your skin or eyes? Remember that to weld, cut, and braze safely, you must recognize the hazards and welding fumes that may be present during hot work. Recall ways to control hazards, including ventilation, personal protective equipment, and body protection, and know what radiation and light hazards are for hot work. Taking the proper precautions while performing hot work will help keep you and your coworkers safe.